we've got quite a good panel to discuss the real-world implications of how we move forward. Our first speaker today is going to be Dr. Luke Minion, has been CEO of Pipestone Veterinary Clinic. He is a veterinarian. He's also served as CEO since 2004 of Pipestone System. That's 300 shareholders owning 40 swine production farms located in Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota. Without any further ado, let's give a round of applause to Dr. Minion.
Thank you. Thanks to Secretary Bones and the Governor. I appreciate the invitation. I was able to visit China with the Governor in March. We are in China as a company fairly often. I spend, as many of the speakers here have shared, I also get to spend a fair amount of time in many places in the world, and I appreciate the invite, and I would echo some of the remarks that have been made. I'm a resident of Brandon. I grew up in Minnesota, but I claim South Dakota as my home state now, and it's easier to do that when we have a governor that can align himself with agriculture the way that this one has. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm going to go through just a few points about who we are and what we do at Pipestone. Some of you may know us, some of you may not. I find some familiar faces in the room. I thought today, rather than a sales pitch, if you will, I would be a little controversial in the points that I make. So I'm not going to have a long-winded talk about how great we are. Certainly we believe we have a great organization. Our organization has 18 veterinarians. We serve mixed species, so we have 4 dairy practitioners, 4 practitioners that take care of companion animals, and the majority of the rest of us that do take care of pigs. People ask me a lot, why in the world would you become a swine veterinarian? And how many of you can relate to that question? Every cowboy in South Dakota wonders that. I did go to SDSU. I have some sense of how cowboys and pig guys get along. But the truth is I wasn't a very good veterinarian at anything else. And I have one story to tell you because I know horses out here, everybody has some sort of near and dear feel about their horses. I was a new graduate. I see Dr. Little over here. I was a new graduate, and I went out to a client who had a horse with colic, and I was going to give a sedative to basically take the pain away or mask the And the good Dr. Minion here managed to hit the artery, and that horse reared up, and it landed on the hood of the car and was thrashing the windows. And I could only spit these words out to the client. It's okay, I've seen this before. I have no idea if they believed me. I wouldn't have believed me. I was 26 years old, the horse is on the hood of the car. Everything ended up okay other than the tears of the 7-year-old girl. But the horse was fine. We're 5th to 7th largest in the United States, and I want to talk about 5th to 7th largest. We go back and forth in the rankings in the U.S. What makes us unique, though, is the ownership. When people think about Pipestone and I say 5th to 7th largest, they think we're owned by corporate, big, large, greedy pig farmers. And the reality is we're owned by 300 different shareholders across 5 states, many of which are residents of South Dakota, many of which would be in your neighborhoods if you live in Davison County or you live basically east of the river and know a pig person. They're probably either a client of ours or a shareholder that we work for. And we're proud of that. We've been doing what we call management services to help producers achieve economies of scale within the pig business for 25 years. We take one pig producer and put him with another so that they can together own sow farms that are large enough to compete. And they entrust us, which was used this morning by the speaker, they entrust us to manage their assets for them. We don't own them. We manage them for those producers. With that set of responsibilities, we make all purchasing decisions, we make all permitting decisions, and things that are necessary to grow what is livestock. We've been struggling, as many of you know, some of you more intimately than others, to find sites to build hog confinements. And how many of you have heard of NIMBY? NIMBY? What's it stand for? Not in my backyard. Everybody feels that way about nuclear power plants, electric utility companies, and what else? Hog farms. Nobody wants a hog farm in their backyard. And so NIMBY quickly turns into a new one that some of you may have heard, and it's NOPE, N-O-P-E. Because if every time, Lucas, that we were told, not in my backyard, we left that place and trying to find another place to build a pig farm, it would turn from NIMBY to NOPE. Anybody know what NOPE stands for? Not on planet Earth. We would not build pig barns anywhere. And guess what? That's worldwide. We spend time in China, and guess what they face there? They don't want pig barns in their backyards. And so the challenge of permitting a sow unit is one of the things I want to talk about a little more here in a minute. From our standpoint, there's this idea, Chipotle. How many of you have kept up with what's going on with Chipotle and their views of modern agriculture? Seen the Super Bowl commercial. It's the most common one. Every single day, we're faced with this challenge that we all can turn back the clock on agriculture. We can go back to my grandpa's farm. I'm a fifth generation. My brother's back home farming, my great-great-grandpa, like many of you. I don't want to go back to Grandpa's farm. Grandpa's farm, I walked beans. I picked rock, right? I scooped pig slop every Saturday morning. The reality is, farmers today, because we're all bigger, grain farmers are bigger, pig farmers are bigger, live dairy farmers are bigger, we're bigger because we have to compete globally. And if you don't believe that, go around the world and look. This is the best place that we should be raising pigs. We should be raising corn. We should be raising dairy cows, cow-calf. I'm for all of them. If we fight away these industries in our own backyard, then just prepare to have them in China. Prepare to have them in Russia. Prepare to have them in Eastern Europe, because they're going there now. They're going to Brazil. And so what I find to be amazing is the very things that we all clung to. I went to South Dakota State, land-grant university, right? What's this country founded on? Cheap food. Wholesome, safe, cheap food. We're sort of forgetting that. And I live it every day. I want to permit a pig farm. A pig farm. And you would think I was the worst person you've ever met. The fact is, pig farms today are 5,000 sows. We're building 2 of them right now. 2 in South Dakota. I'll just leave it at that. And I'm happy to show you. We're proud of them. We know pigs smell, but the smell of a pig does not carry 10 miles. The smell of a pig does not carry 2 miles. And the efforts we take to put technology in place to manage that odor is immense. The project that we're building today near Parker is a $10.2 million facility. That's the facility cost. These producers have put forth that kind of investment to have a livelihood for their families, just like grain farmers are buying land to grow. We can't build 500 sow farms, guys. It doesn't work. They're not competitive. And so the most disappointing part about the process to me is we're such a small group in agriculture. We're so small as a percentage of the population. But what's the most disappointing thing is when we go to permit a sow unit in this state, we meet every requirement of the local ordinance. And 9 times out of 10, what we face is the same list of concerns, odor, so on and so forth, but we meet every ordinance requirement. For those of you that are familiar with this, that means something, right? It means that we follow the rules that county's elected officials and residents have laid in front of us to follow. We meet every requirement. And you know, after we meet those requirements, how many times we have confidence we're going to get a permit? Less than 50% of the time. Why? The emotions run thick. And it's because the people that are those elected officials go to church with the people that are against the project. And they go to coffee, and they've been friends for life. And so if you're an elected official, you're on the Board of Adjustment, or you're a county commissioner, and you're making a decision to support a project that meets all your ordinances but upsets your lifelong friend, what do you do? What do you do? It's a hard decision. I am for local control. Our company is for local control. I want to repeat that 5 times. I think that's the right thing. I 100% support it. One of the problems we have in South Dakota, though, local control has to follow the rules. If they can't follow the rules, then change the rules. Just put a big line on your county ordinance that says We don't want pig farms, period. I told one of the gals here I was going to be controversial. How many feel like I am? I am. I'm trying to be. The fact of the matter is it wastes time for companies that want to come to this state. We spend significant dollars trying to come and put those plans in place. We have engineers, we have purchase options, we have attorneys. We have a lot of work that goes into a plan. And so we need to know that the rules are going to be followed. And so one of the big challenges we face in South Dakota, and I want to repeat this, I am for local control. But I'm for control to be based on what's written, not the emotions that run high in a community because it's NIMBY. NIMBY turns into NOPE. And my request of the audience is to understand what we do and understand that as a pig producer and also a veterinarian who takes care of dairy farmers and also a farm kid, to restrict a pig operation from growth in South Dakota, think about what you're saying. It's, to me, grain farmers and pig farmers have a lot more in common than they like to admit. Grain farmers have no requirements to go in front of a board of adjustment to grow their operation, right? Everybody understand what I just said? If I'm a grain farmer, I just go buy another piece of land. I follow certain rules, no doubt. But I don't have to go ask the board of adjustment if I can buy them and how I can build a facility. The DE&R doesn't regulate all the pieces of my plan. Pig guys do. State has a nutrient management plan. County has a nutrient management plan. Engineered blueprints. We do all those things, and then we're told, nope, not on planet Earth. I support GMOs. I support modern dairies. I support modern agriculture. I don't want to go back to Grandpa's farm. And what I want you to understand is pig guys aren't all big corporate greedy people. And pig guys want to play by the rules. And the state of South Dakota, I can tell you, is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for pig growth. The two projects we're doing here this year will employ 30 people. We fully fund health insurance for those employees. Collectively, they're $30 million projects. We have two more we'd like to do. Those two more will be exact same, so there's $60 million in those 4 projects that we would bring to this state. We'll employ, in those 4 farms, we would employ 60 people. And that's on our farms. That's none of the indirect. My point is, I was so excited, Dr. G, to get invited here. You know why? I love ag. I love pig farms, and I'd love to do it in South Dakota. And so I want to be controversial. I want you to see the passion. If we can't do it in South Dakota, Secretary Bones knows, where are we going to do it? China. If some part of you isn't irritated by that, I'm sorry. It should be. We shouldn't be going all around the world to do anything but export the products we produce here. And that's what I would like you to understand my main point. I know I had 10 minutes. I made my main point, and I have one more. From my standpoint, a disappointment is the farmer support, right? We have to support each other. I support all farmers. We don't all agree, but I support all farmers. Whether that's you want to build a large dairy or small dairy, you want to have a hoop barn or sheep, I don't care. I support agriculture. I support farmers. And anytime I can, I try to speak up for ag. And I know many of us in this room do. But it's easy when that project's in your backyard to turn the page and be the other guy. Try not to do it. We try not to do it. And the other point that I want to pass is this. Production practices are under attack for all of us. Pig guys, right? What's the production practice under attack right now for me? Gestation stalls, right? How many of you are familiar with this? Every single day I get more emails, more pressure to change our production practice because activist groups want me to. In the state of New Jersey, a Senate bill on the floor right now would criminally, would find me in fault as a disorderly offense. I would be fined because we have 150,000 sows under my care. I would be fined $150 million and imprisoned for 6 months because of the production practice we choose, which is gestation stalls. That's on the floor of the Senate in New Jersey right now. How many of you get upset by that? Thank you. That's ridiculous, folks. We've worked for 50 years to double production and a whole bunch of other stats I could talk to you about. Reduce water use by 41%. Reduce land use by 73%. Reduce the carbon footprint by 35%. And how did we do that? With technologies like gestation stalls and many others. And now activist groups are taking away my right to choose. That's not right. And they're going to take away the right to choose for cow-calf guys to castrate the cattle next. And they're going to take away a lot of other rights soon. I love South Dakota. You know why? We're independent. And that's what we need to stay. Some of these folks that want to take away our livelihood need to see this state stand up for it. So I had 2 requests of you. Did you get that? I sort of didn't have a big spiel. I had a lecture. But I have 2 requests. 1, try not to do NIMBY when it's you, as hard as it is. And 2, don't let these activists take our industries. Whether it's GMO corn, or it's BST dairy, or it's ractopamine, listen, the market can sort that out. I'm for all those things, if the market pays for it, right? I'm for all those things. Let the market sort it all out. I'm for that. All of you that want to do that or not do that, I'm for it. But I don't want it legislated, and I don't want it taken because activist groups take it from us. Thank you.
Well, I mean, Luke, I thought you nailed it. And, you know, to a certain extent, you're preaching to the choir, but it is helpful for the choir from time to time to review the sheet music so that we can, when we go out and try to sing that song with others, we're a little bit better prepared so that they can figure out how to sing the song. And that was well said. Next up, we've got, you know, Nathan Jensen, and he's the Vice President, Dairy Industry Specialist for Farm Credit. And he'd done some work with Farm Credit down in the Southwest as a leader down there, and he'd been Vice President and Manager of the Sioux Falls Agribusiness Office for Bank of the West. This is a Beersford guy, but has really become a leader, you know, far outside of just South Dakota, and is a recognized and respected voice in these areas. So let's give a round of applause to Nathan Jensen.
Good afternoon. Everybody's awake after lunch today. You come in and after you've ate, you're all kind of tired and sleepy, so I'll try and keep you awake. First of all, I wanted to thank Secretary of Agriculture for inviting me to be on this panel, and Lucas. I've enjoyed working with the 2 of you and appreciate this opportunity. Also wanted to point out somebody that's near and dear to my heart that's in the crowd, and she was my high school speech teacher, Ann Tornberg. Who's running for office, District 16 down in Union County. So I'm sure I'll get a critique when we're done. But, hey. One of the things that I kind of want to talk about was, you know, how does a kid from southeast South Dakota that grew up on a grain farm end up on a panel talking about livestock production in the state of South Dakota. I actually, in the direction of Dr. G, I started out as an animal science major, and I shared this story with him this morning. After going through my first semester, he advised me, Nathan, have you thought about other things than animal science? And Dr. G, I appreciate that advice, because what it did is I wandered on down to the Ag Econ department, and apparently that was a challenge for me as well, because I got accepted to Cal Poly, and apparently their academic standards were lower because I passed out there with flying colors. So I spent the next 10 years of my career focused on agriculture in California, and in particular the dairy industry. One of the things that I recognized when I moved there was that a lot of the producers that I was meeting, and I was going home with some of my friends that I met there, were family farms just like the one I grew up on in rural Beersford. They maybe were just a little bit bigger, they maybe were just a little bit more diversified, but they had the same issues that we had in our farm, was transition. How are you transitioning to that next generation? Which in growing in South Dakota is the message from the State Department of Agriculture, is they were having environmental issues, they were having water issues, and as those producers looked to that next generation, where were they going to produce that milk? And a lot of them, the one thing that they had that was challenging them that we didn't have in rural Beersford was urban sprawl. So they were being pushed out of California for multiple reasons. And I've made a career of following those producers as they relocated to Texas, to Idaho, to Michigan, to Indiana, to Iowa, to Nebraska. And as I was doing that over the past 10 years, what I've observed is that there was a lot of activity starting to happen in the state of South Dakota. And it started with investments by people at Valley Queen, Nabisco Foods, legacy families in our state investing millions of dollars in infrastructure happening decades ago. This isn't something new to them. And then we're very blessed to have the announcement of Bell Brands come to our state and continue to make that investment. But one of the challenges that we continue to have as an industry, and Dr. Minion and I have talked about it, is permitting. It's not just in the swine industry. It's something that in the dairy industry, we need to get it right, folks, is to focus on those communities that do welcome animal agriculture and want it in their community. It is not going to fit in every community. And I think that there's a real opportunity for the citizens of South Dakota to not only look at those that are looking to come here, but we have a very vibrant dairy industry here already that have invested millions of dollars. These dairy facilities today cost anywhere from $5,000 a cow to build. And if you're going to build a 2,500 to 3,000 cow dairy, that's a $15 million investment just in the facility. Then you got to fill it with cows and working capital. So you're looking at $30 million of investment on one dairy. So to me, those are big dollars that can be spent in our communities and be contracted and built by people that are our neighbors and friends. And I think one of the things that I want to point out is, as I look at the corridor, you know, spanning from Nebraska up to North Dakota, the processing capacity that's here today, we know Bell Brands has some additional needs for cows, probably to the tune of 15,000 to 20,000 cows, but we also have other processors that are looking to expand. And my estimate is that there's probably 5 to 7 million pounds of production per day that will come to this state with expansions at some of the plants in the southern half of the corridor, Agri-Pure being one of them. The Nabisco plant in Lake Norden, Valley Queens recently expanded 30% of their production. So there's an opportunity, if we can grow the milk shed, we need to be able to deliver that to these processors who have invested millions of dollars in our state. If you look at that, say, 5 million pound plant, that's or 5 million pounds a day of growth in the region, it really equates to close to 75,000 cows that we could potentially bring to the region, maybe not just to South Dakota. And as we look at that, and I know the governor referenced $13,000 of economic spin in our communities, I think it's probably closer to 15,000. And if you do the math, you know, you want to move, like John Phillips said this morning, the GDP for the state, that's $1 billion if you take that economic boom to our local economies. That's big dollars, and that really does move the needle when it comes to GDP for our state, and in particular, agriculture. So my message is echoed by Luke is, you know, I would encourage you to stand up when you go back to your local communities and talk about the possibilities that we could have because of the growth, particularly in the dairy industry, as well as swine. So I'll move on and let you go to the next speaker. I know we wanted to open some things up to questions, but those are the things that I had prepared.
Yeah, well said, Nathan. Next up, we've got the president of Clayton Agri-Marketing, and has really been involved in the international marketing of ag products like the ones we've been talking about all day long for 25 years. And that's one of the largest export companies in the U.S., dealing in the live animal trade, exported live animal genetics and equipment to 44 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tony Clayton.
Dusty, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to make the trip from Missouri to come to the North Ground. Walt, I appreciate the invitation to be here. We enjoyed having you down at the Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture in December. Our company, just to briefly tell you about what we do, 2011, we flew a shipment of livestock every 11 days from Chicago. We exported a shipment of either cattle, hogs, horses, sheep, or goats every 6 days last year. We work in a wide array of countries around the world. And I listened to a song by Brad Paisley. It's called Welcome to the Future. And there's a line in there that says, wherever we're going, we're here. Welcome to the future. And that future is food. It is a four-letter word that the rest of the countries around the world and a growing population and growing economies have come to realize. And when I say growing economies and people that we work with, when you make more money, what do? You buy a better car, you buy a better television, and you eat better. And when you eat better, that comes back to protein. And the animal proteins, whether it be beef, poultry, pork, and this kind of starts to spin off, and that's where we go from here. So it's the first time in my 25-year career that I could stand back at a map and I can throw a dart at the map. And wherever it lands, I can hit something right now. I have never seen, when we started our business, we were going to be diverse, because I remember the peso devaluation in Mexico back in 1994, where Mexican peso was 10 pesos to $1, and you woke up, or it was 3 pesos to $1, the next day it was 10. And we went from doing millions of dollars in business to Mexico, the next year we did 0. So we were going to be diverse in our market, so that's a little bit of our approach. The United States, through a lot of genetic performance testing, and people really look at our livestock industry as Cadillacs. We know when it comes to hogs, our days to 250 pounds, back fat, loin iron, things like that. The dairy production that we have, the production, how fast our beef animals grow, they realize that. It's come through research at places like South Dakota State University and other land-grant colleges. So they come and they recognize our genetic programs, and they want part of it. Not only from genetics, but health plays a very big part. Diseases that we have eradicated, like foot and mouth disease in 1929. That's a big part of our marketing plan right now. PRRS, porcine reproductive respiratory syndrome. We export a lot of pigs to Korea, because I know every 3 years they break with PRRS, FMD, and I get to repopulate them. And it's something that goes on around the world. Egypt, earlier this year, they slaughter 100,000 head of their cattle in their country because of foot and mouth disease. Next week, we have our first group from Egypt coming in to buy 3,200 head of dairy cattle. So disease brings new business to us as we get to repopulate countries around the world. We have a new virus in Europe called the Schmallenberg virus that has started in Germany and spread all through Europe. And when you look at the places like Russia and Lebanon and Egypt, they have banned all genetic material, all animals from all the European Union. So that opens up opportunity for us, not only the United States, but the people we compete with, the Australians, the New Zealanders, Uruguay for our cattle exports. In terms of swine exports, we compete with France, we compete with Denmark, we compete with Canada, so it is a competitive market out there. When we spin the globe and talk about markets that will impact you in this part of the world, we see Russia as being a very, very good market. Russia has a farm bill that runs every 7 years. The next one starts January 1, 2013, goes to 2020. And it basically says, if you own land in Russia, you have to own livestock. So now we just see this, we're inundated. Just before lunch, I had a call from a lady in Russia. She goes, we need to buy dairy cattle. How many can I buy? And I said, well, it depends on ship transportation. It depends on, a lot of logistics. She goes, is it possible to buy 100,000 head? I said, well, probably not, but be realistic. But they're just taking in numbers of animals that you cannot imagine. And, of course, they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the feed to manage such numbers, but that's one growing market. Kazakhstan. They come in. You're going to hear lots and lots of news about this country. Right now, I have 1,400 head of Holstein cattle in Wilmington, Delaware, to load on a ship on Monday. 800 of them go to Russia. 600, once they arrive Russia, will go on to Kazakhstan. This will be the first shipment to Kazakhstan that actually travels by water to a landlocked country, and they'll spend 4 days on a European-style truck to access the Kazakhstan market. This will be a market not only for Holstein cattle, but it'll be a big market for Herefords, it'll be a big market for Angus, and I think it'll be a market that'll last for the next 3 or 4 years. You'll see new markets like Uzbekistan, that whole Stan countries of coming to the United States for genetics. You're going to see Mexico continue to be an important market to us because Mexico is now exporting feeder cattle to Turkey. They did it before we did because we didn't have a protocol here in the United States through our Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. They have made 4 shipments of feeder cattle from their country into Turkey. So they're going to have better quality cattle for them to be in the world market. So that's something that's going to relate to you as a seed stock producer here. As I mentioned, Egypt, when people start throwing rocks in Egypt and Libya, they're going to repopulate their livestock sectors. As I mentioned, we have our first group from Egypt coming in next week. We have a lot of processes in the export process. One thing that I can throw out a compliment where it is due, as being president of the Livestock Exporters Association, I know our members tested over 500,000 samples of blood this year at South Dakota State University. And I cannot say enough good things about people at Brookings and the part they play in the export process. And I tip my hat to you folks here in South Dakota that support that diagnostic lab. They are the best in the country. Other things that we fight with is the export process, and we have a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., user fees. When we try to make an export, I have pigs at Chicago tonight to fly to Korea. I'm going to pay USDA about $144 an hour to come out and watch my shipment leave tonight. If I was exporting that shipment from Canada tonight, I'd pay $43 an hour. So that's something that we're going to kind of mix it up in this farm bill. As far as the Livestock Exporters Association to help keep us competitive in the export process because it is a competition. Luke said he didn't want to be, was going to start a little bit of competition or some topics that may not set well with you. I'm going to throw out one as well, and to be controversial. If you're enjoying the cattle market now, as you as a commercial producer, as a feeder cattle producer, we can take you to a new level, and we can put more dollars in your pocket. And I'm talking about the countries like Egypt and Turkey and Lebanon, people that are calling us every week wanting us to send live feeder cattle to their market. But for us to do this, and I'm a firm believer that in the good times, you prepare for the bad, at some point in time, we're going to have to put our heads together and you're going to have to come up with an animal identification program to compete in the world that's not mandated to you, but you have some influence on, and we can meet the regulations that's set forth by us, by a lot of people, the European Union and the OIE, and people that are going to try to keep us out of the market. And I know it's going to be difficult to do, and I know it's taboo. I went to a meeting in Missouri about 18 months ago, and it's such a strong topic in Missouri about animal identification. They had dummies made up of the Farm Bureau president, and they were burning them outside Farm Bureau offices. And one guy stood up in a meeting, and he goes, "This is tyranny." He goes, "This is what Hitler did to the Jews during the war," you know, and I don't put it in the same category, but it's something that we are going to have to come together on and something to agree if you want to add more value and find other markets for your feeder cattle. Some things have changed in our export process. We fly a lot of pigs to China. I go to Asia every 6 weeks. In the past 2 years, we are getting ready to populate our 4th joint venture swine operation in China, where we actually build American facilities and we populate it with American genetics that are registered by the National Swine Registry. We print pedigrees here in the United States, even though the pigs are born in China under our genetic program, under our computer management programs, and we sell grandparent gilts as a royalty premium back to our producers here. We're putting in more and more of those operations. The reason why, everybody's talked about China today, but China is going to mandate the amount of genetics that can go into their country starting January 1. They have put a genetic index on all boars that go into China next year, and right now that index is 105, but they raise it to a 120 index starting January 1. That means any pig, whether it be Duroc, Yorkshire, Hampshire, landrace in the United States, only 2% of the hogs born in the United States on January 1 will qualify. So these are some things that we're in discussion right now, and where the WTO comes into place, and Ambassador Zadicki was here. They've been a big help at reopening that market to China, especially after the H1N1 virus. But these are some fires that we fight to keep you competitive. And you might say, well, everything is evolved around livestock genetics. No, but for every dairy animal we export, every pig that we export, every one that leaves the United States is one less off the market here. And I know that we would like to send a lot of meat products around the world in boxes of beef, but you have to keep in mind, a lot of countries around the world are led by leaders that remember being hungry after World War II. And as a part of national security, regardless of the cost, regardless of their inputs, they are going to raise and produce a certain amount of livestock and livestock protein in that country. So that's why we export them. Our job at our company is we provide a service to a breeder, to a farmer that either A, does not have the expertise or does not have the time to do this process, and we hold them and their veterinarian kind of through the whole testing process. We book, whether it be a ship, a plane, and collect the money, pay the insurance, and do the marketing for them. So a little bit, that's what we do. I look forward to your questions, and again, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, first off, our panelists are to be thanked. I mean, we got started about 20 minutes late, but you guys made your points and did it in a time that has left us a decent amount of time for questions and discussion. So let's go ahead and dive in, because I think when you're talking about livestock development, I mean, it's the discussion that really matters. So we got Luke in the back there with a mic.
Yeah, you know, and Dusty, if you don't mind, just to digress just for a quick second. You know, the fact is the spirit of collaboration, I just want to make a point of it. You know, the global economy is upon us. Our Midwestern states, our United States are very much a part of that global conversation, and it's no accident that Dean Gorder from the North Dakota Trade Office, Tony Clayton from Missouri are here, because that cross-collaboration of our ag economy, I just want to make a point of it, because it's very real, and we have to lock arms together. We're no longer competing against a county next door to us or a state next to us. We're competing in a global economy. And I think that was the takeaway point that I really heard consistent through the three speakers. And I just wanted to bring that around and just make a notable point for us as we go away today, that the global economy impacts us, and the spirit of collaboration that we're trying to bring together as a state is very much a part of it. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Questions? Questions or comments?
While you're going for your question, I may make one comment. We just exported, we moved a week ago 719 head of Holsteins that we had quarantined here in South Dakota. And we're a small company, but to tell you about our export process, you know, our customers fly in on United Airlines. We stay in hotels, we pick up, we use rental cars, we eat in restaurants. And we go to the farm to make selection at your farm of animals for export. We have the local veterinarian involved to do the blood testing. We move the blood by UPS or FedEx. The laboratories, we pay for fees. The lumber that we're using at the lumber yard at the airport tonight to build crates. The airline that flies our animals out. The bank that deducts letter of credit fees from us. The insurance that we pay, and we hope something's left. But we have taken millions of dollars on an export shipment like our boat that leaves on Monday, and we have spread it to many communities and many businesses. So export dollar, as you were saying, it goes a long way, so the collaboration is more important than ever.
Great, got the microphone right there. Go ahead.
Thank you. Ralph Hansen. I represent Campbell County, South Dakota, North Central, and I'd just like to echo Mr. Minion's comments. In 2007, PIC, which is Pig Improvement Corporation, looked at our county versus some other counties in the state, and we took a busload of area farmers. You were probably working that day when we were down there, and toured the Pipestone facility. And we were lucky enough that PIC chose us as the county to build in. They have invested $22 million into our county, brought in 50-some jobs. The farmers that get the nutrient, not the W word, like was said earlier, are just enjoying the heck out of the profits they're getting from it. And I'd like to say, don't be scared to let something come in. Get your county on board, get your county officials on board, get them behind it. And if anybody's looking to relocate a dairy, we're also looking for a dairy into our area. We have a cheese plant in Pollock, South Dakota, and we're not on the I-29 corridor, we're on the Missouri River corridor, so thank you.
No, that's very well said, Ralph. I mean, I find myself really, to pivot from that just a little bit, I find myself really interested in some of these animal activist groups, and Luke, you sort of mentioned, you know, you talked about the pressure that they can bring to bear. I mean, can you guys give a little more context to that? I mean, what are the tactics they've been using? What do we think's coming down the pike? And for goodness gracious, how do we defend against that onslaught?
Can you hear me? All right. Those of you that know me, I could go off for about 1 hour and I'll hit the ceiling. I'll try to contain myself. The tactics they're using are shameless. And I'll share one personal experience. We had a video released on a website from a sow farm that we managed something less than 1 year ago. And the allegation from that video was that there was animal abuse. And the fact is, I'd invite you to go view the video for yourself. The organization that released the video is called Compassion Over Killing. And look them up online, see what they stand for, and look at our video. I don't think you'll find animal abuse. And the industry agreed, and actually most of the vendors and suppliers in the industry agreed. But the tactic that they use that's relentless is they attack brands. And so at the end of that video, which was from a sow farm that we are responsible for, the brands that they flashed at the end were Hormel Foods, Hy-Vee Food Stores, and many other retail brands. And so who do you suppose was on the phone to me within 15 minutes of that press release and that video? Hormel Foods. Food companies invest billions of dollars in their brand. Their brand is everything. And they bring pressure on brands. McDonald's, Denny's, Burger King, Compass Food Services, and every other retailer that you can think of, those activist groups bring pressure that does not stop. And then those companies that buy our pigs are forced to deal with which do they choose. Turn away their customer or come tell us to redesign our production practices. Does that make sense? So the tactics they use are relentless. Every single day we have announcements. The video in our farm, we issued a press release with help of Agri-Marketing, who's sitting here, within probably 6 hours of that event having occurred. It was mentioned earlier about the best you're going to do is get the social media to die down, and that's really what happened. But you know, for 6 months after that, we've had costs within our system because the cost of proving that we do it right never stops. We didn't have to used to do that, folks. Now in our system, we have third-party welfare audits on every farm every year. We have an entire welfare department. We have compliance on numbers of items that you would just say as producers, cattle guys especially, which I love you guys, you would tell them to stick it somewhere. We don't have that privilege. And so it's not going away. And the point I want to share is that the tactics are candidly, there's nothing they won't do. One more point. The person who took the undercover video in our farm had a pen, sort of James Bond-like, that they had in their pocket like this. Every employee we hire is asked to sign a statement that says they will not abuse animals, and they will report if they observe the abuse of animals. The person who took that undercover video signed both those statements. And the day the video was released, the day before that, that person was never to be found again. I don't know where they are. They signed statements saying they would not abuse animals and they would not observe it without reporting it to me or us, our company. They worked there for more than 30 days. The video was 2.5 minutes in length and there was no abuse. But none of that's on the website. That's the tactics.
How do you curb it?
How we curb it is the question. I say it this way. We had an employee meeting. We have 600 employees that work at these 40 sow farms, and I get pretty fired up, and I tell them there can never be animal abuse on our farm, never, period. And then we do third-party audits to document that we're continuously willing and dedicated and committed to improving, and we explore better welfare options. You know, things that people don't like to see, castrating a pig or castrating a calf. You know, there's alternatives to that. We research them. But they have to be practical. The fact of the matter is, most of those interventions, we've already done the research as an industry. You've done the research on your dairy farms, your grain farms. We just have to document it. And so whether it's going to be successful or not, for the extremes, it will not. Because honest to gosh, folks, they want to eat vegetables, and my entire way of life and thought process shouldn't be here. But for the middle of the bell curve, the best we can do is don't make mistakes. When we make mistakes, admit them and correct them, and show that we're committed to improving going forward.
Yeah, I'm on your side, don't get me wrong.
I know you all are, by the way, mostly.
How do you curb the activists or the bunny hunters and the tree hunters?
Yeah, the activists,
You know,
I
think one of the things, is this on? Can you hear me? One of the things that. One of the things that I think we need to focus on as an industry is, you know, we're getting as far as from 2 or 3 generations from the farm today, and we need to be really good about telling our relatives and friends that have moved away from the farm our story. It starts there. And I think if we start to do that, well, maybe instead of some of these reactive things to these folks, we'll be more proactive. I lived in Arizona when they passed the gestation crate law, and I walked out of my local grocery store and had people standing in front of the Ralph's supermarket having just anybody sign a ballot initiative to get gestation crates ruled out of the state of Arizona. And they had pictures on there that it was not gestation crates. I mean, the people, and I even stopped and talked to them and tried to explain to them that they were misrepresenting the industry. They had volunteered. They really were very ill-informed. And the one lady, after I sat and visited with her, she left. So I think it's us individually taking a stand and being a little more proactive.
Well, Nathan, you're headed the same place, you know, I was going to be, and I'd take it one step further. I mean, if you've got an active operation, and to me it doesn't matter whether it's row crops or hogs or dairy or whatever, but, you know, invite a city kid out to look around a little bit. I mean, I've tried to be pretty purposeful in making sure my boys get out with some of our friends that are in production agriculture so that they see what it's really like. Now, granted, you know, riding a tractor down a row of corn is not necessarily going to give you the same experience as taking a look at one of Luke's facilities. But again, you know, one of the themes today has been about, you know, big team, you know, about the broader ag team. And we've got way too many city kids now who don't understand that this is what it takes to get, you know, secure, safe, you know, quality food to feed, you know, the universe. And I don't think they understand. I mean, you think this guy got it? Did this guy become a veterinarian so that he could cause animals discomfort? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And you know, the people who care the most about animal welfare that I've ever known are people who are involved in production agriculture. And I think our kids get that. They're not growing up on the farm anymore. So we got to be willing to take them out there so they have some exposure. I think you're exactly right.
And we have a question from the back with Dr. Dan Little.
Since we're talking about controversial topics, what are your thoughts on where we will get the labor for these operations, and what are some of the more proactive things that we can be doing in probably working with immigrant labor?
Livestock and immigration in one session? Whoo, Katie bar the door. Good times here.
I'm happy to talk about it because another one of these issues, I say it how it is. We will not employ an illegal, period. To my knowledge, in 22 years of running our payroll company, we've done it 12 times, and every time we corrected it. We fully fund health insurance for our employees. We contribute 10% of what their earnings are to their 401k. I am proud to say South Dakotans will come work for us. And I am happy if they're Hispanic. And I'm happy if they're African American. I'm happy if they come to work every day, as long as they're legal. And we pay them well. And I get this in every community we go to. And the gentleman back here, I really appreciate the comment. Because, you know, you go to South Dakota and you say, gosh, where are the people going to come from? We get that question all the time. And the biggest concern for most of the folks is what? We're going to move trailer houses in? Look, the fact is it doesn't need to be that way. If you offer good jobs, it's amazing. Good people show up to work. And we should be proud of that in South Dakota. That's why South Dakota is a place to put pig farms, folks. People here know how to work. And they'll come work for you if you offer them a good job. My answer's simple. We don't need to make this overly complicated. The pig business we're in is globally competitive. But you know, when we go to China, how many people it takes to work at a farm? The 5,000 sow farm we're building by Parker will have 14 hard-working people. That same farm in China, this is not exaggerated, 80 people. You know why? Farm kids right here, they work hard. I'll pay them. We get them from SDSU, by the way. Go Jacks.
All right, we have a question over here.
Yeah, I just want to mention on the proactive side, and Luke, you were very astute in answering that. I think it was very helpful for us in our hearing to be able to have such a balance in terms of our audience. When we did our hearing, we took a standing count, and it was 50-50. If it would have been slightly the other way or strongly the other way, it could have affected commissioners in how they did it. So I think the proactive piece in getting your permits is such a big thing. So thank you.
One of the comments I wanted to make about immigration is this last year my family celebrated 100 years of being in this country. The last time I checked, when my great-grandfather came here, he didn't speak a lick of English. He went to the Danish church, and my great-grandma, even as I was growing up, was, you know, boy, don't cross-pollinate with those Catholic girls across town, you know. And, you know, today, my wife's Catholic, you know. So I think we got to be real careful when we talk about immigration, because we were immigrants once too.
Let's let's turn over to Tony a little bit. You talked about animal ID. I mean, how do you get from here to there? I mean, there are a lot of concerns. I think there are a lot of questions people have. And when you talk about a voluntary plan, you know, mandatory in some respects is easy, right? I mean, you know, there's Big Brother tells you what to do, everybody does it. In some respects, voluntary is more difficult to get to. Kind of walk us through what that looks like.
I wish I had the answers of what animal ID, you know, the face of it would be, but I know from a marketing standpoint of, and I'll just take China for instance. We've been out of that market since December 23rd of 2003 because of this first detection of BSE. And as Ambassador Zadiki and his crew and the APHIS people try to get us back into that market, when they get one thing solved, the Chinese throw up another one, and now the last issue is we can't identify the Mexican feeder cattle coming into this country. That's the new hurdle to get over that. So there's always something on a moving target. And we have so much competition from the European Union. And you have to realize when you start traveling Europe and how small their farms are. And sure, they can identify everything. I'm amazed at when I come up here, how big your ranches are. And I know somebody trying to chase a calf down at 2 a.m. to put an ear tag in. I know that just doesn't work. But so many of the regulations that we have that are negotiated by USDA APHIS, and it just says the animal is known to, you know, the dam of origin. And those are the things that we have to meet those statements. So I know I'm probably skirting your question a little bit. I don't have the answers. I know we don't want it mandated from Washington down to us, but it's going to take producer involvement and working through this to find a plan that we can get around these issues of health. And where this comes back to in the bigger picture of animal identification will be the topic of regionalization of this country, not if we have a disease problem, but when we have a disease problem. And, you know, we haven't had FMD since 1929. I could scare you to death if I told you that we had a detection of that in this country and how things would change, and they would change all the way to the Capitol steps here in Pierre. And it's something that we really need to stand back and we need to think about, because people travel, people move. We have a lot of enemies around the world. And I have seen foot and mouth disease. I see it in China. The swine operations we have in China, we actually build fences around the farm to keep the employees there in apartment buildings, because they go home to backyard pigs and then they come and contaminate the swine farm. So, you know, these things move around the country, and I just think that we need to be proactive as an industry to look at the big picture and the what-if questions.
Well, you talk about the Capitol steps in Pierre. Certainly plenty of folks who hang out there have foot-in-mouth disease. So, I don't need your pity. You don't need to clap for me. All right, other questions, comments, accusations?
Dusty, as I'm thinking about the topics of conversation, on one hand, we're saying, let's build our livestock development here in the state of South Dakota. And then Tony comes from Missouri and says, we're going to export them. And so there's kind of this dynamic of a conversation here today. And Tony, in the state of South Dakota, we have a program that's really been kind of in a fledgling phase that's been making progress called South Dakota Certified Beef. I'm curious as to what you think when you look at in a global marketplace, and Luke, if you have an opinion on this as well, the value of South Dakota putting its stamp, because it's a process, it's a USDA process verified program, whether that be South Dakota Certified Beef, maybe potentially South Dakota Certified Pork, whatever those different elements that might grow to. Are we on the right track in something like that, or has that relevance passed?
No, I think, the old term riding for the brand, I mean building a brand, and you'll see different efforts by commodity groups or your Department of Agriculture in targeting a certain market and which you want to pursue. You can't do the shotgun approach, but I think putting your brand on it, and when you get people here and you build that customer base, you find that really good customer, and then you build off of it, and you spend. And I think it's a very good approach. We have a branded program in Missouri. We call it Agri-Missouri. It's on ketchup and mustard and everything. And it's trying to build a brand, and I think it's a good move.
Just a little different, maybe take on that question. I think the brand comment, I would have nothing to add. Often with producers, I work with family farmers, and I'm a farm kid, and often one of the biggest criticisms that we take is, gosh, Luke, why are you going to China and teaching all those guys how to raise pigs the way we do? How many of you actually feel that way right now? None of you, because we're in this room, right? But get that a lot, and I think that's the take I have on your question. And I think the answer is just two things. Number one, let's do both, everybody. We should be raising pigs and dairy and alfalfa and every other thing here that we have the natural resources to do and do globally competitively. That ought to be job one. But don't forget, we should do both, because what Tony's doing generates dollars in this economy, generates opportunity for the future generations that are going to be needed. 9 billion people, I think it is, by 2050. Food's going to come from here. And it's going to come from other places in the world, too, because their national security depends on it. And so, to me, we shouldn't have that be the divisive mentality either. Farmers shouldn't argue about that. There ought to be a simple answer. Let's do both, because there's room for both.
You bet. At the table of opportunity, there's room for everyone.
Luke, if everybody comes back here at 3:30 when I start, they'll find out why your point is correct. I do have a question on your 2 new units. Are you doing anything that you can talk about to make those units, the changes in technology of what's going on, not necessarily eliminating the crates, because we know how efficient crates are, but you probably have some things that are confidential with your company, but are there any new developments and things you're adding onto those units that are new to the industry?
Thanks for the question. First of all, the unit we're building over by Parker, there's going to be an open house, so come and see. That would be an open invitation for all of you. We'll have a pork sandwich for you, too, maybe something to drink. We want to show people. The technology of gestation stalls or pens, I can speak a long time, but at the heart of it, we've chosen stalls in this operation because I think that's the best thing for the animal, for our employees, and for our shareholders. At the same time, we may need to make a change if the market dictates it, and we're prepared for that in the design, which would be too much detail to go through, and it's not proprietary, it's just probably boring for most of this audience. But we basically prepare for the fact we may have to change against our will, but we have technology on the welfare side that way. One of the, I'm appreciative of the gentleman back here from Davidson County who led the permit process. One of the things we volunteered to do in Davidson County as it relates to odor is put on biofilters, which have a connotation of many different things in people's minds as well, but that's research done at SDSU by Dr. Dick Nicolai. We volunteered to put those on the facility to try to reduce odor. That would be a new technology. No lagoon. We haven't built a sow farm with a lagoon for 15 years. All the nutrients are stored underneath the building. That reduces odor immensely. So technologies are always being applied in agriculture. That's one of the reasons I love agriculture. And those would be some of them in the new farms.
You know, Dusty, just an observation. Let's have these young folks stand for just a minute. You guys up here, go ahead and stand up and turn around and look at this. I want the audience here to take a look, because we talk about livestock development for a reason. You talk about technology, you talk about an investment in South Dakota. The fact that we have the youth of our state sitting here, I'd like to have this entire room, every vacant seat in here filled up with the youth, because the reason why we're talking about it is that we're trying to create a relevant economy for the future of South Dakota so that these folks have a place to call home, and it starts with the South Dakota zip code. That's why we're having this conversation today, guys, and let's give these guys a round of applause for being here.
Thank you. I want to, Nathan already mentioned that I'm a retired teacher and one of his teachers, but I want to talk about a different issue that I think is so important as we support expansion of livestock in South Dakota, and that's the lack of veterinarians in our state, and not perhaps enough slots for reciprocity at Ames, and even the long-term dream of having our own vet school in the state of South Dakota. So I'd like to hear some of your reactions on that. I'm a Tornberg, and those of you that have horses probably have heard the Tornberg name associated with the Dakota large animal in Harrisburg. And I know from talking to my brother-in-law, Steve Tornberg, how many vets are nearing retirement age in the state of South Dakota, and I know it's a great challenge for our state. So if we're going to get livestock to grow here, we're going to have to get some vets too.
I'm sorry to the rest of the panelists that I'm talking all the time. Again, I'll just say it, I think, how it is. We're privileged to have 18 veterinarians. We have 2 new college vet school graduates join us now. One's dairy, one's pigs. I'm 37, so I think I can now talk about them, Dusty, as they're the young guys. I'm telling you, the people that come out of vet school are outstanding. And so the good news about veterinarians is the quality is outstanding. The bad news is the quantity. Now, having said that, let me caution. I grew up with cattle, and when I was a kid, why I decided to be a veterinarian, I'll never forget, the vet came out, he did a C-section, I was 12, and I'm like, I'm going to do that. That was so cool. You know, the reality is cow-calf operations in South Dakota, it's hard to be a veterinarian for you guys. Why? You do most of it yourself, and you should do most of it yourself. And it's a hard life, man. You're on call all week long, every night. You're going out at 2 a.m. pulling a calf, and you don't have many partners. And one of the problems we have for cow-calf operators is if you're a veterinary student, you come out of school now with almost $200,000 of debt. Compute that. And then you go work in Sully County, South Dakota, and you work for some cow-calf guys, and they call you out once a year to work the cattle, and once a year to pull that calf that should have been pulled 2 days ago. Because they pulled the ones that don't need to be pulled 2 days ago. And so my point is this. I don't know the answer to your question. I know that the problem for veterinary clinics, from my vantage point, is that they're just like every other business. They have to innovate to survive. And the services of a traditional James Herriot veterinarian, it's a hard way of life. And a lot of people aren't going to choose that. And so the quality part, I think we should feel comfortable with. The quantity part, I don't know the answer. I think for some of the areas in remote parts of the U.S., we're going to have large animal technicians. I just don't think, in my career, my practice career, I think cattle guys are going to get service from the large animal technicians that are every bit as skilled as a large animal veterinarian in many of the skills. And whether that's a good outcome or not, I don't know, but that's my 2 cents on it. Veterinarians, like Dr. Little's over here, and there's probably others, they really become consultants, and they become business consultants. And there's a lot of room for that around the world, and certainly in this state as well. And there's veterinaries in traditional services capacity, but I think the challenge is going to be to get a veterinarian to move to a small community, do on-call every single night, and pay back $200,000 student loans. That's a tough proposition.
What we've seen in the dairy industry is we've seen a several veterinarians come out of Mexico, and I sometimes would equate maybe that's to more similar to maybe some of our animal science programs here, but the dairy industry has been capitalizing on that now for several years, where some of these larger farms that will employ some folks that have graduated from a university in Mexico and bring them over on a work visa.
I've had one more thought, sorry, but it goes to Tony's point. If we get foot and mouth disease in the United States, you will feel the pain of not having enough veterinarians. And we all will. It will be at the steps of this building or the Capitol. There is a problem in a foreign animal disease situation. If there aren't enough local veterinarians to get our arms around where this disease is at, how far it's spread, that is scary. Service for traditional level stuff, I think the market will sort it out.
Then in our export process, you know, we have to have accredited veterinarians pull the blood. That's in the regulations that are negotiated country to country. So it will be a concern in the export process as well.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think this has been just a fascinating presentation. Let's give these guys a round of applause.